Alright folks, buckle up because we're about to dive into one of the biggest mysteries that's ever happened in the skies. I'm talking about Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, and let me tell you, this story still gives people the heebie-jeebies even after all these years. Can you imagine just vanishing into thin air with 239 people on board? It's the kind of thing that makes you wonder, right? So picture this, it's March 8th, 2014. Just another regular Saturday morning at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia. The terminal's buzzing with activity, people grabbing their morning coffee, families saying their goodbyes, business travelers rushing to their gates. Nothing out of the ordinary, you know? Just your typical airport chaos. Flight MH370 is scheduled to take off at 12:41 a.m. local time, heading to Beijing Capital International Airport in China. It's a red-eye flight, the kind where most passengers are probably planning to catch some shut-eye and wake up in a different country. Pretty standard stuff for international travel, wouldn't you say? Now let's talk about the bird itself. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER, registration number 9M-MRO. This wasn't some rickety old plane fresh out of a junkyard. Nope, this baby had been flying since 2002 and had logged over 53,000 flight hours. She was well maintained, checked regularly, and had a solid track record. The kind of aircraft that pilots actually like to fly because it's reliable as clockwork. The crew boarding that night was top-notch, no joke. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah was at the helm, a guy with 18,365 flight hours under his belt. This wasn't his first rodeo, folks. He'd been with Malaysia Airlines since 1981 and was considered one of their most experienced pilots. The man was practically a flying encyclopedia. His first officer was Fariq Abdul Hamid, younger but still plenty qualified with 2,563 flight hours. Together, they made a solid team. In the cabin, you had 10 flight attendants ready to make sure everyone had a comfortable journey. These weren't rookies either. They knew the drill, knew how to handle everything from fussy passengers to emergency situations. Everything was going by the book. So who was on board? Well, you had 227 passengers from all over the world. Most of them were Chinese nationals, about 153 folks heading home or traveling for business. Then you had Malaysians, Indonesians, Australians, Americans, and people from a bunch of other countries. It was like a mini United Nations up there in the sky. Among the passengers, there were some interesting characters. You had a couple of guys traveling on stolen passports, which raised eyebrows later but turned out to be unrelated to what happened. There were also 20 employees from Freescale Semiconductor, a tech company, heading to China for work. Normal everyday people with families, jobs, dreams, plans for the future. Makes you think about how fragile everything really is, doesn't it? The boarding process went smooth as butter. Passengers filed in, stowed their carry-ons, settled into their seats. Some were already dozing off before takeoff. Others were flipping through magazines or chatting with their seatmates. The flight attendants did their safety demonstration, you know the one, pointing out the exits, showing how to buckle a seatbelt like we haven't been doing it our whole lives. At 12:41 a.m., right on schedule, the aircraft pushed back from the gate. Captain Zahari and First Officer Fariq ran through their pre-flight checklist. Everything looked good. The engines roared to life, that powerful rumble that you feel in your chest. The plane taxied to the runway, and at 12:42 a.m., they were cleared for takeoff. The Boeing 777 thundered down the runway, picking up speed, and then, whoosh, wheels up. Flight MH370 was airborne, climbing into the dark Malaysian night sky. The lights of Kuala Lumpur glittered below, getting smaller and smaller as the plane ascended to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. For the first 38 minutes, everything was peachy. I mean, textbook perfect. The plane was flying exactly where it should be, following its planned route. Air traffic control was in regular contact with the cockpit. Captain Zahari's voice came through clear and professional during routine communications. No stress, no panic, nothing out of the ordinary whatsoever. At 10:01 a.m., the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, or ACARS for short, sent its last transmission. This system automatically sends data about the plane's performance, location, and status back to the airline. It's like the plane's way of checking in and saying, "Hey, I'm doing fine up here." After 10:01 a.m., though, radio silence from ACARS. Weird, but not necessarily alarming right off the bat. At 1:19 a.m., Captain Zahari made his last radio contact with Malaysian Air Traffic Control. His words, "Good night, Malaysian 370. Casual, calm, normal. The kind of sign-off you'd hear on thousands of flights every single day. Nobody listening had any reason to think anything was wrong. Why would they?" 2 minutes later, at 1:21 a.m., the plane's transponder stopped transmitting. Now, for those of you wondering what the heck a transponder is, it's basically a device that broadcasts the plane's identity, altitude, and speed to air traffic control. When that goes dark, the plane essentially becomes invisible to civilian radar. It's still there, obviously, but air traffic controllers can't see the detailed information anymore. This is where things get seriously bizarre, folks. Because what happened next doesn't make a lick of sense for a plane that's supposed to be heading northeast to Beijing. Instead of continuing on its planned route, MH370 made a sharp left turn. And I'm not talking about a gentle course correction. This was a deliberate, controlled turn that took the aircraft back across the Malay Peninsula. Military radar picked up the plane crossing back over Malaysia, heading northwest toward the Andaman Sea. The aircraft was clearly being flown by someone who knew what they were doing. It wasn't spiraling out of control or wobbling around like a drunk driver. Nope, this was precise flying. It climbed, descended, made turns, controlled movements. At some point, the plane turned south and flew for hours over the Indian Ocean. How do we know this? Well, even though the transponder was off and ACARS wasn't transmitting, the aircraft was still automatically sending electronic handshakes to a satellite. These weren't detailed messages, just little pings saying, "I'm still here." Kind of like when your phone connects to a cell tower, but you're not actually using it. The last ping was detected at 8:11 a.m., more than 6 hours after that final good night from Captain Zahari. 6 hours of the plane flying somewhere over the vast emptiness of the Indian Ocean. And then nothing. Complete silence. The plane was gone. When MH370 didn't arrive in Beijing at its scheduled time of 6:30 a.m., alarm bells started ringing. Families waiting at the airport went from annoyed to worried to terrified. Malaysia Airlines launched into crisis mode. Air traffic controllers started backtracking, trying to figure out where the plane had gone. And that's when they realized this wasn't just a communication failure or a simple problem. The plane had literally vanished. What really gets me about this whole thing is how normal everything seemed right up until it didn't. You've got an experienced crew, a reliable aircraft, perfect weather conditions, and then boom, the whole thing just goes sideways. Makes you wonder what was going through the minds of those passengers, doesn't it? Did they even know something was wrong? The search that followed was absolutely massive. I'm talking about ships, planes, submarines, you name it, from dozens of countries combing through millions of square miles of ocean. They found some debris that washed up on shores thousands of miles away, confirmed to be from MH370. A flapper on here, a piece of wing there. But the main wreckage, the black boxes that could tell us what really happened, still haven't been found. Theories have been flying around like crazy ever since. Some folks think it was a hijacking. Others reckon there was some kind of mechanical failure that disabled communications but left the plane flyable. There's been talk about pilot actions, though nothing's been proven. Heck, some people even jumped to wild conspiracy theories about everything from secret military operations to alien abductions. When you don't have answers, people's imaginations run wild, you know what I mean? But here's the thing that really sticks with you. Those 239 people on board were just living their lives. They'd hugged their families goodbye, maybe complained about airport security taking too long, settled into their seats expecting to wake up in Beijing. They had no clue they were about to become part of one of aviation's greatest unsolved mysteries. Think about the little details that make it so eerie. Someone's coffee getting cold on their tray table, a kid's coloring book left unfinished, business presentations that never got delivered, families that never got closure. It's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night if you think about it too much, isn't it? The investigation has looked at everything under the sun. They checked the cargo manifest, nothing suspicious. They investigated every single passenger and crew member, turned their lives inside out looking for any hint of what might have happened. They analyzed the radar data, the satellite pings, the weather conditions. Every single piece of evidence has been scrutinized until people's eyes went crossed. What really throws a wrench in things is that the plane's behavior after losing contact doesn't fit any standard emergency scenario. If there was a fire or decompression, the pilots would have tried to land ASAP, not fly for 6 more hours. If it was a hijacking, why fly south into the middle of nowhere instead of making demands or heading to a specific location? Nothing adds up the way it should. The technology we've got nowadays is mind-blowing. We can track our pizza delivery in real time, but a massive commercial aircraft can just disappear. Seems crazy, right? Since MH370, there's been a huge push to improve aircraft tracking systems. Nobody wants this to happen again. The aviation industry learned some hard lessons from this tragedy. Can you imagine being one of the families waiting for news? Days turning into weeks, weeks into months, and still no real answers. Just theories and speculation and tiny pieces of debris washing up on beaches half a world away. The not knowing might be the worst part of all. At least that's what the families have said over and over again. The search efforts were called off in January 2017, then resumed briefly in 2018 by a private company, then suspended again. The ocean is just too vast, too deep, too unforgiving. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is the size of multiple countries, and the needle is at the bottom of the ocean under miles of water. Talk about a tall order. Every now and then, someone claims they've figured it out or found new evidence. But so far, nothing's cracked the case wide open. The plane's final resting place remains one of the ocean's best-kept secrets. Mother Nature doesn't give up her mysteries easily, does she? What happened in that cockpit after 1:19 a.m.? Was there a struggle, a catastrophic failure, a deliberate act? We might never know for sure. And that uncertainty is what makes this case so haunting. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces that we can't stop trying to solve, even though we know we might never complete it. The legacy of MH370 goes beyond just the mystery, though. It's changed how we think about aviation safety, about tracking aircraft, about what we thought was impossible in modern times. It's a reminder that despite all our technology and expertise, nature and circumstance can still throw us curveballs we never saw coming. So there you have it, folks. The last normal moments of Flight MH370 before it became one of the most baffling disappearances in history. A routine flight that turned into an enduring enigma. 239 souls who deserve answers that we still can't give them. What do you think happened up there? Got any theories of your own? It's one of those mysteries that everyone's got an opinion about. And honestly, until someone finds that wreckage and recovers those black boxes, your guess is as good as anyone's. The story of MH370 reminds us that sometimes life throws things at us that just don't make sense, no matter how hard we try to figure them out. And maybe, just maybe, that's the scariest part of all.